Ilhan Omar is being dragged for her statements about Israel, and people are claiming it's anti-Semitism. And I want to make one thing really clear. I've talked about this a lot, excuse me, but we have there's another story that I think is it's funny, and I want to focus on this. Muslim feminist unleashes ultimate insult on Nancy Pelosi. You're white. Yes, I mean, as far as I can tell, so is Linda Sarsour. I mean that literally. I don't know what her ethnicity is. They both just look like two white women. The reason I want to focus on that is because that's not a rebuttal to the criticisms of Ilhan Omar and her statements. Saying you're a white feminist doesn't solve anything. But it will be. First, we'll take a look at Vox's take, a left-wing take, on the controversy surrounding Ilhan Omar. For those that aren't familiar, Omar has repeatedly made statements that have offended both Democrats and Republicans. She said things about allegiance to foreign countries in reference to politicians, which many people said sounds really, really close to the dual loyalty accusation. There is a conspiracy theory that Jews around the world have more allegiance to Israel than their home nations and seek to benefit their home nation through either exploiting or, manipulating the countries they actually live in or were born in. That's a conspiracy theory, and it's absurd. Obviously, there are going to be some people in some countries that care greatly about Israel, but it's still considered to be a very offensive trope because there are very many proud American citizens who, while they do care about Israel, are proud Americans. So the controversy arises when Omar, she crop dusts anti-Semitism. Now, I think it's a stretch from a lot of politicians where they're pointing the finger at her and saying she's an anti-Semite. Ben Shapiro, for instance, is going hard against her, calling her an anti-Semite. I personally think there's other reasons to believe she may be an anti-Semite. And it's less about the things she's saying and more about who she associates with in combination with the things she says. So it's grains of sand making a heap. When Ilhan Omar repeatedly makes statements that get really close to grazing anti-Semitic tropes, Israel hypnotizing the world, it's all about the Benjamin's baby, and then saying foreign allegiance twice, the question arises from many moderate people, like, you're getting really close to certain tropes here. Like, there's military reasons why the U.S. supports Israel. It's I believe it may be our only ally in the Middle East, and so the U.S. has a huge interest in maintaining a liberal democracy in the Middle East. Now, there's reasons to criticize Israel, but it's interesting how her criticism falls to these specific tropes. I do not believe any one of her individual statements is overtly anti-Semitic. Actually, the hypnotizing one is kind of weird, because that's actually part of old propaganda about Jews hypnotizing people. But criticizing allegiance to a foreign country, I can respect that. But let's see what Vox has to say, because Vox is, they're pretty far left. Why her comments about allegiance to Israel create such a firestorm, and why it all matters. The long-simmering controversy over Ilhan Omar, heated language on Israel, has reached a boiling point, with House Democrats weighing a plan to vote on a resolution clearly designed to punish one of their own rising stars. Omar had already stirred controversy with comments last month, attributing pro-Israel sentiment to the financial clout of the pro-Israel lobby. Then last week, she spoke about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict on a panel with Rashida Tlaib, who, like Omar, is a first-term member of Congress and a Muslim. She said, "I want to talk about the political influence in this country that says it's okay to push for allegiance to a foreign country." In full context, Omar doesn't explicitly identify who or what this political influence is coming from, but given her previous comments, the latest remarks struck many observers as playing into well-worn anti-Semitic tropes about Jewish attachments to Israel, making them disloyal to the United States. Some were no longer inclined to give her the benefit of the doubt. On Monday, House Democrats unveiled plans to vote on a resolution condemning anti-Semitism that reads as a clear rebuke of Omar personally, criticizing the insidious, bigoted history of accusations of dual loyalty. Yet Omar has vocal defenders in both the Democratic Party and the broader left progressive community, including some prominent Jewish leftists. Her defenders argue she is being attacked in bad faith as a Muslim woman of color, oh God, here we go, who dare criticize Israel, pointing out the anti-Semitism on the right doesn't get nearly this much attention, because the anti-Semitism on the right is like fringe factions of people who aren't in government repeatedly making these comments. Okay, Ilhan Omar has a right to free speech. She has a right to say what she wants, even if I think it's wrong. I absolutely believe there are politicians who are trying to take what she's saying and stretch it as far as possible, because it's the same thing we see with people who are offended. You need a reason to silence other people. Omar shouldn't be silenced, but she should absolutely be condemned and criticized, as should anybody who makes comments that are offensive. And I also want to point out, too, I'm for free speech. I think she should be allowed to say it. But you can't claim that, so-and-so said something offensive. Sargon of Akkad, he tweeted out a joke, got banned for it. It was a combination of things. They were offended by it. Okay, well, you don't get to decide who was offended and then in this instance claim it's not offensive. I try explaining to people, listen, if Democrats and Republicans and members of the Jewish community say they're offended, then it is offensive. That's the rules. Those are the rules you created. Period. But let's move on. Let's because I did want to highlight some of Vox's take on this. Okay, we'll put it this way. Vox said what Omar actually said and why it's problematic. So sure, let's leave understanding that Vox believes it's problematic and look at how Nancy Pelosi, for daring to be offended and operate in the same rules the far left wants to operate in, is now being attacked for being a white feminist. And dare I say it, I am defending Nancy Pelosi on this one. But it's not just that. It's moderate. It's Republicans and Democrats, moderates in this country, who are standing up and saying this shouldn't be okay. I don't completely agree with everything they're saying. More to the point, though, when Linda Sarsour says Nancy is a typical white feminist upholding the patriarchy, doing the dirty work of powerful white men, I'm going to have to say no and defend the moderate Democrats on this one. I'm going to say this too. When it comes to any politician I've ever had any kind words for, I think Nancy Pelosi and the moderate Democrats might have the least amount of criticism from me and more praise, because I've criticized Trump a lot, but not as harshly as I criticize the far left. And I typically don't talk about moderate Republicans or Democrats, but I'm going to have to point to Nancy Pelosi. Her rebuke of the Green New Deal is a green dream. I didn't necessarily comment on that, but I agree with her. So let's see why the far left is dragging her because she dares speak out against Ilhan Omar. Listen, Ilhan Omar can say things, they're offensive. Defend her, by all means. Nancy Pelosi challenges her back. That's discourse. It is. But I don't believe Ilhan Omar should be censured or anything. I believe she should apologize and be condemned if people find it offensive, but that's a totally different story. Women's March co-chair Linda Sarsour went on a rant against Rep. Nancy Pelosi Monday night, saying she is unqualified to be a feminist or Speaker of the House. Sarsour was reacting to a planned House resolution condemning anti-Semitism, an offense that both she and her movement have been accused of. She said this is why she wanted Rep. Barbara Lee, another California Democrat, to be Speaker of the House. The prominent Muslim feminist went on to criticize Pelosi for being white and doing the dirty work of powerful white men, suggesting this disqualified her as a women's right advocate. No, absolutely not. So people have asked me, Tim, I look at your YouTube channel, my main channel, because my second channel admittedly is pretty different. Sometimes it predominantly goes after the far left. I have no problem admitting that. My main channel is very critical of the far left. I tell people, find me a video where I'm talking about Nancy Pelosi or like Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz. You're not going to find it. I really am indifferent towards the moderate left and right in this country arguing with each other. You will absolutely find videos where I criticize the far right when, like Charlottesville happens, for instance, when this attack happens. When the Proud Boys were arrested and charged, I made numerous videos talking about what happened. And in my videos about Gavin McInnes, I have repeatedly said he crossed the line. But here's the issue. 800 plus attacks on Trump supporters minding their own business, the far left repeatedly criticizing people for being white. Once again, another story, a moderate Democrat, someone who I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a big fan of the corporate crony moderate Democrats and the Republicans either. But I absolutely think it's wrong to point the finger at Nancy Pelosi, who is criticizing Ilhan Omar for saying things that many people found offensive and saying it's because you're white and you're doing the dirty work of white men. Here we go. Disqualify Nancy Pelosi's feelings because you don't like the color of her skin. And this shows the duplicitous nature of the far left, and it's one of the main reasons why I do not like them. What do they say about me? Someone who's a social, liberal, mixed-race individual, oh, he's a conservative, he's alt-right, whatever, all the complete, total nonsense. Well, you can't do that to Nancy Pelosi because she's literally a Democrat. So what do? They attack her based on the color of her skin. If you think that offensive speech should be banned, don't be surprised when they ban your offensive speech, because who gets to decide what's offensive? That's why I believe in free speech, and I'll say it again. Ilhan Omar should be allowed to say this without being censured. Condemned, call on her to apologize, fine. But this is the perfect example of the far left being racist. Oh, but they say you can't be racist against white people, please. You are using someone's race to disqualify them from being a women's rights advocate or for speaking on behalf of people who are offended by comments they felt were anti-Semitic. Here's the problem with the feelings don't care about your facts trope, right? You've got the conservatives, you've got like Ben Shapiro saying facts don't care about your feelings, and then you have the left saying, yes, but feelings come first. Let's talk about this. Ocasio-Cortez said some people are so concerned with being precisely factually correct instead of morally correct, right? That's their argument. That it's a narrative of there's moral good and factual good. Well, look, if you're not factual, you can't be good. Lying to people, manipulating them, or saying things that are wrong won't help anybody. But here we have a circumstance where feelings, we're literally talking about feelings. One group says I'm offended, one group says it's not offensive, that's a fact. It doesn't matter what you think the facts are. You pushed for rules based on feelings, and now they're being wielded against you. And that's what bothers me when they come to me and say, please defend our free speech. Yeah, I will. I will. I said it numerous times in this. Absolutely. You are right. Free speech is paramount. But goddamn, when you come out and start slamming Pelosi just because she's white, I will give Pelosi credit for pushing back on the insane Green New Deal. I really appreciate that. I think she's a little too tribal when it comes to pushing back on Trump, and it annoys me because and Trump deserves criticism on this front too with the wall stuff. But at a certain point, it's like, dude, they elected Trump. Give baby his bottle. Can we move on? I was going to swear. I didn't swear. But this is exactly the point. I would be more likely to vote for a moderate Democrat than a Republican, but I would absolutely speak out against this kind of insane racist behavior against someone who is upset because Omar has repeatedly said things that have been offensive to people. There you go. End of story. I'll leave it there. I got one more video coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you then.